everyone, and welcome back to my channel. We're still doing the readathon for the American Cancer Society. Links will be in the description below. I'm reading The Eyes and the Impossible by Dave Eggers, a blind read. I don't know what's happening, so if you get easily triggered by, you know, animals going through things, going through nature's world, then be advised. So, yeah, the last chapter, Johannes is trying to process all the information that there's more to the world than just his little island and his little park. And that kind of scares him a bit. And it kind of made him angry because, he thought he knew everything about the world and found out he didn't, which, you know, we don't know everything. It's just not possible. And that can be hard for some people to take. So here we go. Chapter 25. Sorry, nose itchy. In the morning, amid the catapulting confusion of my mind, I had no choice but to do my rounds. I was still the eyes. It seemed to be a quiet day in the park, with very few people out and about. This was a work day for the humans, so most were in their boxes, sitting still, looking into blue lights, and not talking and riding and dancing in the park. It was cold and windy outside, too. A state of affairs that happened often here, given the park's proximity to the sea. So on this windy and cloudy day, I raced through the park, past the peanut pond, and through the eucalyptus forest, and past the lime green waterfall, and I saw nothing unusual, nothing to upset the equilibrium. I was running close to the speed of light, passing by the plaza, when something caught my eye. It was a rectangle on a stick, stuck in the grass, and in the rectangle was a dog, a picture of the dog, a dog that looked like me. My friends had told me about these pictures, but until now I had not wholly appreciated the strangeness of seeing one myself. There were words around the picture, and although I cannot read, the meaning seemed clear. The sign was telling people to look out for this dog. This dog, I deduced, was me. Startled and unnerved, I ran quickly away from the sign, only to encounter another one just up the way from the first one. It was the same sign, same words, same dog. I ran again, this time cutting through the forest near the plaza so I could get to the other side. I suppose there was part of me that hoped the signs were only in the plaza, only pertaining to that one side of one part of the park. But when I broke through the forest and into the clearing on the other side of the plaza, I saw another sign, another me in a rectangle. And now I just added the clues up, and the truth seemed undeniable. These signs were warning people about me. They were telling people that I was dangerous or a fugitive of some kind, or worse. Could these signs be telling people to catch me, to kill me? There you are. It was a voice above me. It sounded like Yolanda. I looked up to see that it was indeed Yolanda. She was floating near me, as if she might land on top of me. I'm always a bit concerned that because Yolanda's landings are so chaotic, so much wing and beak and bone, that she will land on top of me. She has never done this, I should note, and this time was like all the others. She landed and gave me nothing more than a gentle breath of her folding wings. Did you see the signs? She asked. I told her that I did, and before I could express my bewilderment at being represented all over these signs, all over the park, she said something strange. No, no, she said, these are new. These are different. These say that there is a coyote in the park. Is that what the signs say? I asked. Yep, look, she said, and swept her gray wing under the series of symbols. Apparently those meant coyote. Yolanda knew I could not read, knew that only she could read, and yet she seemed to hold out hope, eternal hope, that by occasionally pointing to some collection of symbols we'd suddenly learn to read as she did. It was a little bit irritating, to be honest. Ah, I said and nodded. She smiled. I was very intrigued by this new development and the possible existence of one or more coyotes in the park. I had heard of coyotes, but only as long ago species. Coyotes were known as a mangy and troublesome and even dangerous kind, and as far as I'd known, they have been driven out by the humans thousands of years ago. So you haven't seen one? Yolanda asked, and it took me a moment to realize that this put in question my competence as the ice. If the humans, being so clumsy and oblivious, had seen coyotes before I did, what credibility could I claim? I haven't, I said. I could not lie. I will not lie. Well, I guess we have to be on the lookout, she said, and then, with a few flaps of her heavy wings, she drifted off. I was left a bit stunned, thinking that an entirely new, or old, kind of animal was among us, a dangerous and troublesome sort of animal that looked, from a distance, a bit like myself, and it was all very confusing. There he is, said a voice. It was a parks person on a bike. She was riding towards me, with the second parks person riding a bit behind her. The first one pedaled toward me, and I had to chuckle briefly to myself because they seemed to think that they would catch me by simply riding toward me, these people. Ha ha hoo! They do make me laugh. Bicycles are funny jokes to me. They give me laughs and chuckles and sometimes even giggles. Bicycles are as statues are to rockets, with me being the rocket. Now, the two bicycle people were getting off their machines. They believed they had caught up to me due to their great speed. Oh, the hilarity. Ha ha hoo. Now they were coming at me from either side slowly with their arms out like those crabs. It really was sad how much they really believed they could capture me this way. Two people with their slow legs and little hands and their shiny mushroom hats on their heads. I waited because I'm mischievous with creatures who think they are fast. Sometimes I wait until they are close to me to tease them, to make them feel they have a chance. In this case, I waited until I could feel the heat from their little hands and could see their wide open eyes. They were so excited. Then I bolted. They blinked, and I was 100 feet away, laughing to myself and shaking my head. Where is he? The one asked. Over there, the other said. How did he get over there? He was just here. These people. They blinked again, and I was away again, double the distance. Oh, I have fun. I have fun with people like this. And then the first one spoke into a black device for a time, and then the two of them got back on their bicycles and headed toward me again. It was funny, it really was. But one can only play with such people for so long, and there's always at the outside possibility that such play would bring about more control of the animals people and possibly unusual or new weapons. And anyway, I had things to do. I owed the bisons an update soon, and I had yet to see what was happening with the goats, a topic about which they would want updated information. When I got near the windmill, as I was from the light, as I was slowing from light speed to mortal speed, I could see the vast mass of hair that was the goat army. They were eating just as they were eating the day before, all their heads down and their paws and their jaws jumping and their eyes dead to all other stimuli. The day was downcast and windy, but there was one shaft of light just then as I approached, and this one shaft of light ended on the silvery gray back of a certain goat, who was away from the rest, who was looking exactly at me. Hello, she said. I could not believe she could see me. I was 100 miles away or so. I was hidden amid the blackberry thicket and beyond the forest of redwoods. I see you, she said. I decided to emerge. You weren't very well hidden, she said, which normally would have stung, would have pierced my heart, but there was such good cheer in her voice, such gentleness and humor that I found myself smiling. She was so immediately appealing that I couldn't help asking her why she was so far from the rest of her group, eating all alone. She said her name was Helene. She had never heard this I had never heard this name before, but it sounded both regal and smooth like a trickle of warm water. and thus far she herself seemed both regal and smooth like warm water. So why was she so apart and alone? Oh gosh, she said, they wouldn't want to talk to me. I don't blame them. Look at me, I'm a freak. I looked at her carefully. To me, she looked like all the other goats, and I told her so. Oh, you don't have to be polite, she said. I'm used to scaring everyone around me. I'm horrible, a monster, a blight. Again, I told her I couldn't figure out what it was that she thought so unusual or frightening in her appearance. Um, she said, for starter, my horns. She tilted her head to me to afford me a better look. I examined them closely and still saw nothing out of the ordinary. Oh, she said, laughing, I forgot you don't have any goats here, and maybe you are not so good at observation. Now it was me who had to laugh. She didn't know I was the eyes. This was very funny to me, so I allowed myself a good long chuckle while shaking my head. Ha ha hoo! What's funny? She asked. Before I answered, I had to do one last ha ha hoo just to demonstrate the ridiculousness of her suggesting I was not so good at observation, which was evidence that she was not so good at observation. I had to tell her as humbly as I could that I was not only good at observation, but that I was so good that I was basically in charge of all seeing in the park. Well, congratulations, she said, and seemed very sincere in saying it. That sounds like a lot of responsibility. I nodded, grateful she recognized this. But your powers of observation, she said, make it all the more puzzling that you can't see my glaring defects. I have to say, I said, there is nothing much different about your horns. Every other goat I've seen has two, and they're all basically the same color. They curl away from your heads in the same way, and get pointy at the ends. I've observed this about all of your horns. I've compared and contrasted, and they're all basically the same. She scoffed. She really did. And I was beginning to like her. Then she scoffed. Scoffing is not the sound a friend makes. But you left out the most important part, she said, smiling in a way that made me feel a little silly. It's not the length or the curvature or the color that matters, she said. It's the formation of the crossed lines. It took her some time to explain this in a way that allows me to explain it to you. Apparently, in the world of goats, there are lines that go horizontally across each horn, and to goats, the pattern of these lines are of great importance. The best kind of lines, Helene told me, are both wavy and parallel. The next best kinds are straight and parallel. Parallel is just the baseline for normalcy, she said. And if you don't know what parallel is if you have one line here and one line here, you could draw those lines forever and they would never touch. So that's what parallel means. Okay. Sorry. Got distracted for a second. Now I look closely at Helene's horns. The lines on hers were not parallel. Some were wavy and some were straight, some were loopy, and some were even crisscrossed. But even after I noticed these differences, I backed up for a second and could barely see any lines at all. Now you can imagine the horror I inflict on others when they see me, Helene said. They tell me about this horror all the time, so I try to stay out of the way so as to cause as little suffering as possible. Sounds like those other goats are mean. If the way the lines on her horns are is any indication, good grief, calm down. I thought about this, and as I headed home, I had never known anyone who had these sorts of thoughts about themselves, these low opinions about some aspect of their physical form, these odd ideas about the right kinds of stripes on one's horns. I thought about how I might convince Helene that she looked fine, that she looked like every other goat, or rather, she seemed to me to be just the right amount of different from every other goat. I made my way through the park, avoiding the roads, avoiding the well-trod paths, and absolutely avoiding the plaza until I finally arrived home, only to find my home had become a wall. It was a wall! A human had done this, that much I knew. A hole in the tree where I had entered my home was now a wall of gray cement. had seen this before many years ago. When the Control the Animals people or the parks people wanted to close off a hollow, they did this. I remember there was a small, very small hollow of a tree where humans would put garbage, and eventually that hollow was made into a cement wall. But that had been a long time ago, so no humans knew of my hollow. Except apparently they did. I sat and looked at this wall for some time, knowing that it was impenetrable, but also not believing that my home was no longer available to me, that it had ended, that my hollow was now a wall. Only occasionally have I felt real anger toward humans. I felt it toward Twisty, my captor, and once or twice I have felt it toward the drivers of the vehicles who drive recklessly, who endanger us animals and also their fellow humans. But I have never felt real anger toward the humans who work in this park. They seem to love the park like we love the park. But this was cruel. This was intentional. They knew an animal lived in this hollow. They must know that animals live in hollows, and they still made my home into a wall. Why? Oh, man. Well, there's an illustration here, and you can see there's Johannes there running through the trees. Now, I have to wonder, there hadn't been coyote signs before, but there are now, and he said that like he kind of looked like the animal in the picture. So I have to wonder if maybe, just maybe, when the hammock man who watches the bison was coming to check on the bison, if he saw part of Johannes and thought maybe he was a coyote. And so then you get all upons about calling, animal protection, which he's just looking after the bison. He thinks that maybe they're in danger and there's a threat. So, man. And now his home has been all cemented in. He was living in a hollow of a tree. And yeah, I mean, I get it. They do that sometimes to protect the tree and, and to discourage predators like coyotes from being in a place where they're not supposed to be. But poor guy, that's not cool. Where's he going to sleep now? Oh, well, I guess we'll have to find out next time because that was the end of the chapter. So if you like my content, please like, subscribe, click the notification bell. And if you haven't already, please donate to the American Cancer Society. It helps so many people out who are going through their treatments and helping out with like their medications and things like that. You know, it's a battle that they gotta work through, and they can use all the help they can get. All right, Roma, Riva, and Krishna, Auntie Heather loves you very much, and love the rest of you too. See you next time. Bye bye.